So when we're thinking about identity deception, this is a very well-known and very challenging problem to solve. So identity deception is really when somebody is impersonating someone else. Now, when I'm taking this to the area of supply chain attack, there are two points to focus on. First point is I am a supplier that I'm being impersonated. So as a supplier, how do I protect my clients so they keep doing business with me, maybe to stay compliant? As a supplier, how do I protect my clients from me being impersonated? The second side of maybe the same coin is if I'm a customer working with suppliers, how do I make sure that first my suppliers do whatever they need to do to protect themselves and protect me? And also, how do I tell apart legitimate suppliers from illegitimate suppliers, from somebody who's impersonating my suppliers? And I'll give a simple example. I like using Proofpoint as an example. Let's say Proofpoint is offering a service that is essentially cloud-based service, right? Say we do email security. It is a cloud-based email security. Therefore, we have cloud services that we're using, and we building our email inspection on top of these cloud services. And then this email inspection, this is a product that we sell to our customers. So in this scenario, the cloud provider is our supplier. We are the supplier of our clients. So being Proofpoint, we want to make sure that first we protect it against our supplier. And I'll show you why this is important just in a few minutes. We want to make sure that our suppliers are not being impersonated and we're not getting fake invoices that we are expected to pay. And being supplier by ourselves, we want to make sure that we are not being impersonated and our customers are not paying fake invoices. So really, how do we do it? And the easiest way to do it, or the easiest way to look at this, is to start with authentication, right? It's all identity deception is really a problem of authentication and problem of preventing identity deception fraud. When we're coming to email, when we are receiving an email, how do we actually know which email is legitimate versus not legitimate? Which email actually came from our supplier and something that came from someone who's impersonating our supplier? It all starts with DMARC authentication. So, and DMARC, for those of you who don't know, DMARC has really two parts. First part is SPF, which really says who's allowed to send on my behalf. So it's just a list of domains or IP addresses for every domain listed in our DNS. And it lists everyone who is who's supposed to be sending on our behalf. So maybe ServiceNow or my Workday or Microsoft or SharePoint Online, all of these are legitimate suppliers. So we would like to, or partners, and they sending on our behalf. So we would like to list them in our SPF record. If ServiceNow is sending an email on Proofpoint behalf, for example, we would like them to be listed in our SPF record, so the recipient part knows what to do with these emails when they arrive, how to process these emails. The other side is the next step in this domain authentication journey is how do we sign our messages? So to authenticate, SPF is not perfect. If it was perfect, our life would be so much easier. But the next step is simply using encryption with what's called Dkim. I don't really want to go too deep into how Dkim and how SPF work, but we just need to know that they both work together to indicate to the recipient part if the email sender is legitimate, if he is authenticated, and if he is authorized to send emails on behalf of a company. Now, this is a very interesting part. While doing this, one other thing that we want to focus on is really to deliver our email, to conduct our business and to deliver our email. So when we're thinking about email authentication, it's kind of it's a little tricky to work on email authentication and to complete email authentication in few easy steps as we all wanted to do, because our senders have multiple IP addresses, they can send from multiple domains, and this is all before we even starting to talk about the cloud. So I want to show you what it will look like if we used a system that we call it Supplier Risk Explorer, and this system is learning the behavior of based on email messages. It learns the behavior of your partners, or it learns from the email traffic. It learns to identify who your suppliers are, and it looks something. It looks like something like what you see in a screenshot right now. So this supplier service now has been identified as a supplier of Proofpoint, and not just that. The system looks at the risk that is associated with the supplier, and the risk means how many messages we can see, how many messages we see here, versus how many messages are malicious. So you can see here, that malicious messages, we have 378,000 messages, and one of them was malicious. So that's first data point. How many malicious messages did we see out of messages altogether? The second data point is what this domain does. Let me pull up some demo here, so you can see what would it look like. So this is a supplier from a demo account. I can look at the domain that's sending these emails, and this is just sample data. I have 0 threats. There is one message that is coming to my domain, and the sender is classified as high risk. High risk means a couple of things. First, because we are processing a large volume of emails, high risk in this case means, what is my DMARC policy? Am I asking, so if I'm looking at Microsoft, for example, Microsoft is saying to everyone who receives an email from Microsoft to validate the signature of the email, to validate SPF, to validate Dkim, and if it's failing DMARC validation, to reject the message. Whatever the recipient gateway will do, it is really up to the recipient gateway. But Microsoft is instructing everyone who receives an email to reject the messages if they fail in DMARC. This company doesn't even have a DMARC policy, which means that recipient gateways will not be able to follow the instructions of the sender, saying, what should I do with this message? If I can't authenticate the message, if the message is failing authentication, what should be my next step? Should I reject it? Should I quarantine it? Or maybe simply just ignore it and keep monitoring it? So that is first thing. Second thing that we're looking at is how much threats we actually seeing from this threat actor or from this domain. Again, this being a demo system, the number of threats is obviously 0. But for each one of them, what we can do is to look how many phishing emails we have seen from this domain, how many imposter or BEC emails that we've received from this domain, malware emails or spam emails. Not only that, we can click on each one of them and go to the email itself to see the attributes of the email, to see the indicators of compromise, forensics that we have extracted. Everything is there. And again, I want to kind of pause here for a second and explain how this information is collected. This information is collected because we processing company's email and inspecting every single email that gets in and gets out. As a result, we are aggregating this information, we're collecting this information, analyzing it, and cross-referencing this information for every attack, cross-referencing it with what we've seen in other environments, with other customers. So phishing, imposter, malware, as you can see in this particular case, we've seen 4 phishing messages or 4 Proofpoint customers being phished from this very domain. We've seen 2 Proofpoint customers receiving malware from this domain. So therefore, this domain is classified as risky. Now, there are 2 ways of mark the domain as a supplier. We can manually add the domain as a supplier, or our AI will learn that the domain is a supplier, or as we call it, discover it, based on analysis of incoming and outgoing emails that are passing through gateways. We can take a look at the domain itself that is sending emails, and if there is more than one domain, they will all appear here. And what's more important is that we have actually a list of lookalike domains. So imagine that, and I've seen it more than once unfortunately with customers, when they have a ABC domain, if this domain is, if the company is large enough and interesting enough for the attackers to try and defraud, then somebody will create a domain ABC-customer service or ABC suppliers or other domains that will suggest that this is, in our case, is VZW. And you can see corp.com, corporate.com, news. All of this is just a way to impersonate domains and make sure that when email is sent, now when I have this domain registered, my DMARC is completely useless because my DMARC is only going to look at vzw.com. And from the DMARC standpoint, vzw-corp.com is a completely different domain. It has nothing to do with vzw.com. And I can tell you more that impersonating domains are often passing DMARC authentication because it's very easy to set up a domain, to set up DMARC authentication and start authenticating your emails. saying, yeah, that's supposed to send on behalf of my domain. Now, when users getting emails from lookalike domains, they not necessarily they will not necessarily realize that this is a lookalike domain, that it is just trying to impersonate the main domain. And here we are at the core, looking at the core of a supplier impersonation that happens over email. Suppliers are being impersonated by using the same services. The imposter uses the same services. Let's say the imposter uses Office 365 and sends an email using Office 365 based on the reconnaissance that has been performed. So the imposter is using the same cloud services that have been already listed in maybe in the SPF record, right? If I'm listing Outlook.com, everyone from Outlook.com can send an email on my behalf. So that's one. Second, the imposter is setting up a completely new domain that will not get blocked, that will not be even monitored for that part, but will look almost identical or very similar to the domain that attacker is trying to impersonate. The users, on the other hand, or the customers of this domain, will see it as a legitimate domain. In this case is vzw.com, and they will engage with the email. This is, if you're looking at a business email compromise, this is how a vast majority of BEC attacks are happening. Somebody is impersonating a domain, somebody with an impersonated domain impersonating a supplier, and from there are actually a couple of actions attackers can take. One of the actions being, well, let's just simply ask for an invoice, or to pay our invoice, or update our banking information. This stuff is happening. This is something that gets the news. The higher the amount, the more noise it makes. But there is also other ways of doing it, or other ways this could be harmful. Sharing a document or sharing an update with someone, and when it impersonates the real domain, is going to get users' credentials compromised without them knowing it and without the security folks knowing it. Because when a URL comes, we're all using cloud services today, right? When a URL comes from SharePoint or from Google Drive or from Excel Online, a lot of users will look at the domain. Well, this domain has a little padlock here. Well, it's secure. Oh, yes, it does have a certificate. It looks like domain I am working with. Again, yes. So a lot of users will not even think twice. They will simply click for an update, sales quote, notes. I mean, whatever the attacker is, whatever game the attacker is playing. And once they're clicking on it, they're giving up their credentials to log in to get the document, and you have another way of getting compromised by compromising your credentials. So this is just one side of things. So how do we protect ourselves from this scenario, from our supplier being impersonated and actually getting to our business? And the way to protect it, really, there are a few steps to protect it. Not everything is something that we can necessarily do internally. One thing that is very helpful is when we're looking at data like this, when we're looking at something that says, well, there's no DMARC policy. Normally, this is a conversation that we're having with security teams. And this conversation goes to, okay, we need to stop talking to technical people. We need to start talking to our procurement or purchasing department, because our technical people can implement technical controls. Our procurement, however, is responsible for managing, or supplier management is responsible for managing suppliers. With this information, we can go to, and we have done this. This was very interesting when we started having these conversations. So procurement would reach out to the suppliers and say, you have to protect yourself and you have to protect us. By not protecting yourself, by not authenticating your email traffic, you actually putting us at risk and you putting yourself at risk. And some of the companies we work with have started to work on amending the purchasing contracts to make sure DMARC policy is implemented, even if it's not rejecting right away, at least implemented in quarantine mode or in non-mode. There is a process around email authentication. So that's first. Obviously, having an email gateway that is filtering traffic and inspecting business email compromise traffic is critical, because it will make sure that emails that are that have the signs of impersonation of business email compromise will get stopped at the gateway and will not deliver to the users. So that's the second part. What do we do with this? This is a problem, and this problem is completely outside of the email world. Lookalike domains are, when somebody is sending an email from a lookalike domain, even if organization has an email gateway, it doesn't pass through the email gateway. It is a third party sending to a third party, impersonating you as an organization. So what we came up with to kind of deal with it, for every domain that we're working on, we are looking for lookalike domains. So like here, we can see a list of lookalike domains. And then again, it goes back to the conversation with the same supplier. Hey, you are putting us at risk. You have few lookalike domains that were spotted in the internet. Another thing that we do with this system, and by the way, it's called email fraud defense. This is all part of email fraud defense. Another thing we can do, we can look who's impersonating us as Proofpoint Corporation. Who's impersonating Proofpoint and might be reaching out to our suppliers. We do have a takedown, virtual takedown service. So if someone is impersonating us or one of our clients, our virtual takedown process or takedown system can take down a domain key and can blacklist an IP address or change the reputation of an IP address with browsers and with major reputation repositories. So that is how we prevent inbound emails or inbound BEC. Now let's talk a little bit about the other side of things. We just talked about how do we prevent an incoming. What do we do to make sure all our traffic is properly authenticating? How do we, and when I'm saying all our traffic, I don't necessarily mean standard emails or emails that are sent as marketing, because those emails are sent by third parties and they're not necessarily something that we even have control over, right? If we're sending something through SendGrid. But what about emails that we send using cloud applications? What about emails that we send using software that we run in-house? So for this purpose, and again, this is all our emails. This is legitimate emails that are just getting sent using different methods. And this is all the senders that we can use. Again, in today's world, when we're using cloud pretty much for for everything, starting from our email communications, our CRM communications, um, cloud-based communication still says that it is coming from our company. So what do we do to make sure those emails, the emails that are legitimate, are getting to our customers? Because the other side of email delivery problem is actually deliverability. We want the emails to get to our customers, but we want to filter out bad emails, emails that are impersonating us. Now, the way we are dealing with it, actually, two ways. Sorry. First way, you remember I talked about SPF, Sender Policy Framework. And the first step in this journey is simply to hide your SPF record. We have this ability to host all your SPF record for you. That way, attackers will not be able to see that, oh, he allows or they allow Oracle and Salesforce to send on their behalf. The only record that is going to be here is Proofpoint. And we will manage like in a reverse proxy way. We will manage all the records for you, and we will show only one record in your SPF DNS record. So that's first step. Second step is actually to create a system. We call it secure email relay. And this is a cloud-based system that takes all these senders, pushes them through one cloud sender, which is secure email relay, makes the authentication. When the authentication really happens, it adds SPF, it is passing SPF, it will pass DMARC, it will come from the company.com, from your company, and it will get to your clients, partners, and employees as authenticated message. That means that if your partners are enforcing DMARC reject or inbound DMARC reject, and your domain is advertising or publishing a DMARC reject policy, this will help to make sure that imposters are kept out and legitimate users or legitimate senders are delivering your email. Again, if we're looking at the at ServiceNow again as an example, ServiceNow will send all emails to secure email relay. This email will get authorized and it will get sent on behalf of your company. Same goes with internal applications. So some internal application will leverage Google Cloud or SendGrid. This all can be simply done by secure email relay. And again, the advantage is that these emails will get authenticated, and you can start a DMARC reject policy, and your customers can start enforcing inbound DMARC reject. I want to show you quickly how it works graphically, what actually happens. But I maybe want to stop here and see if there are any questions. Okay, so altogether, we have a way, or applications or devices simply sending SMTP traffic and passing through Proofpoint system to get Dkim signing to evaluate for malware, for spam, and at the end of the day, they are being relayed back to the internet. That's that is in a nutshell the easiest way to look at this. All of this, how the open LDAP communicates with the sender and uses email relay API. This is maybe important, but this is not really critical. The critical part is when email comes in, we sign it, we Dkim sign it, evaluate it for not being spam or malware, and then we relay it to the world when it's completely authenticated, and making sure that your DMARC reject policy is effective. Okay, so one last thing I wanted to share with you is this link that points to Proofpoint DMARC SPF creation wizard or validation tool. So you can look at your domain, you can see where your domain is with regards to the DMARC journey. And actually, let me show you. Let me show you what it looks like. So this will this tool that I've just shared will pull the DMARC record and will tell you from proofpoint.com. So first, we're using DMARC version 1, which is standard. Our policy is reject. And here's where we are sending aggregation reports and forensic reports. This is really all your DMARC record needs to show: where to send the reports and what to do with messages that are failing authentication. If you want to learn more about different tags and different options with the DMARC, you have them here. Percentage of the policy, you have them. You have all the explanations here with explicit tags and implicit tags. You can review it, and again, you can generate your own DMARC record, create using the wizard, or you can check your SPF. Do you have something to validate logos if they are legitimate? That's actually a very interesting question. So yes, the logo validation or BIMI is more or less built in today's email infrastructure. The only thing it requires is for your DMARC policy to be either on reject or on quarantine. Once your DMARC policy is on reject or quarantine, then your emails that are getting sent out will get sent out with the logo. And obviously, this will, from the marketing and branding standpoint, this is a big deal. But also from the impersonation or identity deception standpoint, this is also a big deal, because if you able to show your logo, then users will learn that, they will learn to tell your emails from the emails that are impersonating your organization. Thank you for that question. I want to thank everyone for attending the session, and enjoy the rest of your day.